Hello everyone and welcome to our latest installment of our Meet the Experts webinar. Today we're going to discuss how you can easily verify contact data within Salesforce. Our presenters today are myself, Thomas Brents. I'm the Director of Product Marketing for our Data as a Service and Data Quality product lines here at Informatica. I'm joined today by Cheryl Vale, one of our outstanding pre-sales engineers on the Data as a Service team. Thanks for being here with us today, Cheryl.
Thank you.
To remind you again, today we're going to be talking about the importance of accurate contact data for your Salesforce customers. Now, I presume that if you've gotten this far that you're either an existing Salesforce customer or you're considering using them in the future. So that's really going to be our focus today. But why is that important? A friend of mine recently shared this story with me. Now before you get confused, no, bad contact data isn't really going to summon a tornado, but it can actually be equally disastrous. So let me set the stage here. A tornado rips through your hometown. It destroys nearly every home on your block, but somehow misses yours. You start fixing the repairs, and then the unthinkable happens. Your house gets torn down by mistake, all because of a bad address. Now, we don't all work for demolition companies. In fact, I'd venture to guess that none of you actually do. However, we rely on accurate contact data for our customers and prospects. Now, the consequences of having a bad address for one of your customers may not lead to you actually leveling their house, but what if you were supposed to send them an important package and it gets returned to sender? It will blow up your reputation with that customer, right? They aren't going to trust you to quite literally deliver on your promises. What if you had to reach them in a hurry or just reach them at all? I bet you all have sales teams or customer service departments that pick up the phone and call customers using the data inside of Salesforce, right? Sure you do. That's what Salesforce is great for. But what about marketing campaigns? I bet the email addresses that you store on your customers are also logged in Salesforce. You get my point here. Bad contact data will cause you to have a bad day, just like this poor resident here in Texas. Thankfully for you, fixing contact data is much easier than rebuilding your customer's house. You can easily clean up your email addresses, phone numbers, and post addresses right inside of Salesforce. This is all done through Data as a Service. Why? Well, because bad data in your CRM is a huge issue. It's what you've built your business around. This inaccurate data is killing your team's performance, so verifying it today with Data as a Service is the best option for you. You can do this very quickly through our interface in Cloud Customer 360 for Salesforce. This integrated technology makes it possible to clean your customer contact data right inside of Salesforce where your problems exist. You can easily verify addresses, emails, phone numbers, so that you can reach the maximum amount of your audience. Now, I'll just take 2 minutes here and walk through the three services, and then we'll get into the demo with Cheryl. First, our email verification is just a little different than what you'll find from most verification products. Our email verification is going to go out to the actual domain in real time to validate that the email address is accurate at that moment in time. So instead of going out to a stale database that might have gone out of date 2 months ago, we're going out to Gmail and saying, hey, is thomas.brents@gmail.com, is that an accurate email address? See, because email addresses, they're the most volatile piece of contact data that there is. I can literally set up 5 email addresses this afternoon, sign up for a few things, and then cancel the email addresses later today. In fact, about 30% of all email addresses change every single year. Now, in addition to verifying if an email address is accurate, we're also going to tell you if it's safe for you to use. By using our hygiene layer, you'll be able to identify and eliminate any malicious threats like spam traps that might be lurking in your database. This will help you to keep you off a blacklist and ensure that you can reach every one of your customers safely. Next, we can validate customer phone numbers in over 240 countries and territories, so basically the entire world. That's huge because your customers aren't limited to your country's territorial boundaries. They're scattered all over the world, and you need to be able to reach them. Now, speaking of reaching them, the last thing you want to do is call them in the middle of the night. Nothing ruins your brand more than calling a customer at 3 a.m. to tell them that you'll be at Dreamforce this year and you hope to see them there. That's going to crush your reputation. So within our phone validation service, we've added location data like time zone that your customers are in, so that you can contact them at the appropriate time. We've also added things like, is this a landline or a mobile number, so you know where you're contacting your customers. This helps to ensure that your team doesn't hurt the customer experience, but rather maximizes it. Finally, we can validate that every mailing address is accurate for you. Again, this is a global solution and can help your team to reduce the risk of having your next direct mail campaign fail. It will save your marketing team money, and it will ensure that that customer experience we were talking about is a great one. When 20% of all addresses change every single year, it's important that you keep your data up to date. In addition, we offer the highest data quality scores in the business. We're the only address verification vendor to have received every single postal certification that's available in the entire world. That's accurate data that you can rely on and build your business around. Now, we know that a number of you have major integrations through Informatica Cloud going into and out of Salesforce. It's a major ecosystem, and you no doubt are moving customer data into and out of Salesforce. If you are, that's a great time to clean your dirty contact data. Why move bad data into Salesforce? Why let it exist in there? You can clean it up upon entry whenever your sales teams are updating records or periodically throughout the year. As you know, contact data changes frequently, so keeping it up to date is essential. Now, to show you how we can actually validate within Salesforce, I'm going to go ahead and pass this over to Cheryl for a live demo. Cheryl?
Thank you, Thomas. So we're going to show you today, actually go into Salesforce and show you those different places where you're going to be putting that data into Salesforce. Whether you're updating data that's already living in there, entering a fresh new contact or record into your system, whether that's via someone manually putting it into your system, or having a automated upload and then running a batch against that data. So that way we're taking care of all the disparate ways that you're loading data into your Salesforce environment. And we do that again through our Cloud Customer 360 for Salesforce. We have our admin tab, which lets you access the batch jobs and our setup. I'm going to start though, let's go to a contact, and we're going to take a look at what if I want to update data that's already existing. So I have a record and I want to say, okay, how do I add new data to this record? They've had a change. How do we approach that? For our system, we utilize Visualforce pages. And for our Cloud Customer 360, it's really an easy wizard-based installation that walks you through that setup. And when you add the Visualforce page to your layout, you can then go ahead and start verifying those addresses, emails, and phone numbers. We have ours right up under our contact detail, but really you can choose that user experience. What's great is that you can really decide how those users are going to be updating and entering that data into your system utilizing our application. I'm going to start and go ahead and let's take a look at that mailing address. So I'm going to hit the pencil here inside the Visualforce page, which is going to let us edit that information. Now, as I start typing this information, we're going to start getting suggestions. So this utilizes our fast complete capabilities. So depending on how fast you want to be able to put that data in, you can start suggesting those suggestions for your customer. And again, there's parameters, so you can decide how and when those suggestions are going to start being generated if you wanted to utilize this capability. But if you really don't mind or don't want to use this capability, you don't have to. You can easily turn it on and off for your users. So now that I've put in just that zip code and a little bit of street data, I see the address that I want to use, so I'm just going to select that from the addresses that have been suggested for us. And I'm going to go ahead and click that. It's going to fill in the rest of our data, and now I've really got two options. I can go ahead and hit this little gray question box where I can click to verify that information. So I can go right ahead and click that information, and it's going to go ahead and verify that address for me and give me a green checkbox and let me know that that was correct data. I can also go ahead and surface over that green check mark and show some information that's about that address. And for this, we can show that information hovering over this checkbox, Or up in our contact detail, we can also show that information as well. So again, whatever you'd like that user experience to be and how you want to keep track of those clean addresses, you get both an easy to see icon, but then also other data if you wanted to run reports or see on a larger scale what's happening with that data that's flowing into your system. Our other option from our Visualforce page would be to save to verify. So if I hadn't hit that click to verify, I could go right ahead and hit save. It's going to verify that address and it's going to go ahead and save that data for us. Now you ask, what if you don't want to use that Visualforce page? Can you still utilize the validation services on this layout? And you absolutely can do that. So how we would do that, you would need to put the Visualforce page somewhere. We have ours right front and center, but you could put it lower on the page or hide it, but you absolutely can still do the verification within this. So I'm going to come up here now to my detail, and I'm going to go ahead and click the pencil and verify a phone number. So now, when I edit this, I can go ahead and do our validation as well. I'm going to tab out, and here you don't have the click to verify and the save to verify. You would just go ahead and hit save, but when we hit that save, it's going to go ahead and validate that address for us. And it's going to update some other information. As Thomas was talking about, he mentioned the time zone that you have your phone saved into. So when we do that validation, this is a phone number that's on the East Coast of the US, and we're able to show that information to our end users through here. And as well, if we look down at the Visualforce page, it's updated everywhere that object is living. So again, you can do it in both places. So this is great. It's able to help you when you, again, have that data that's already living in the system and you're updating, you're adding new data to an existing record. So what happens if you want to put a fresh new contact in? So say it's someone that's never been in your system before. We're going to go back to contacts now, and I'm going to go ahead and hit that new button. And as I hit the new button, this is going to look very similar to that Visualforce page that we were just looking at. It's going to have a very similar functionality where we've got that gray question mark box next to the item that we want to upload. So I'm going to start and just type an email in. And as we type that email in, I can go ahead now and do the click to verify. When I click to verify, we did that call. So as I hit that button, it called out to that Informatica mail server. It said, does Cheryl.Vail exist? Is this email exist? And it does. And we, again, have that green icon that's going to show us that this is a valid email address. And we can also hover over again, and it's going to give us that extra detail about it. And that extra detail is really just fields in Salesforce that you create and have the information populate into. It's an easy mapping that you set up in just a few moments. And after you do that mapping, again, your end users can see it here, or you can go ahead and run those Salesforce reports, again, to see how that email is looking or how that information is looking inside of your environment. And now, not everybody has someone manually putting that information into Salesforce. More often than not, you have information that is also flowing in an automated way, whether it's coming from a web form or coming from other type of collection, and you're having it flow in via API or something like our Informatica Cloud Platform, which can bring information into Salesforce for you. So for our batch instances, we're going to go to the data as a service. So all of the address, email, and phone services are considered our Informatica data as a service offerings. So we're going to go to that job instance. And when we come here, again, you've got some options. You can do scheduled jobs, you can do ad hoc jobs. So for that data that's flowing in on a regular cadence, you can have that batch job be timed to go as that data is flowing in. Or if you have users that are, say, doing a bulk manual upload, maybe they have an Excel file, you had a conference and you collected data, and you're now manually adding that in, and that's a one-time thing, you can go ahead and do an ad hoc batch job. So either way, you can go ahead and run it. And from here, you would just hit that play button. for the ad hoc jobs, or if you wanted to run a scheduled job earlier than scheduled, you could absolutely do it from that point as well. You have a batch queue, which is going to tell you what's currently running, and then you're also going to have your queue entries for things that have recently ran. To be able to set up that batch job, we're going to go ahead and hit Add Template. So for the description, you can put anything that you would like up there that's going to resonate for your users and what that job is going to be about. And if you wanted to add that schedule, you would go ahead and just pick a time for it to be scheduled. Let's say I want to run this job every day and say, I don't have a lot going on at midnight, my users aren't working, so I want to run that job at midnight. However, you do have other time options. Again, whatever is going to work best for what your use case is. Now for objects, you can come here and say, I want to go ahead and run against a contact like we looked at in that manual upload, but we can handle both our standard Salesforce objects and our custom objects. So this will let you interact with both of those different types of objects that can be living within your system. I'm going to go ahead and pick contact though. And now we can decide, okay, am I going to run this batch against phone numbers, emails, and addresses? Or do I want a more focused batch where I'm just going to pinpoint email addresses or maybe phone numbers? You can go ahead and make those selections and do it against one service or all three services, depending on what you're subscribed to and what kind of contact data you're going to want to be running against. And also, if you are doing those automated jobs where you have the same batch running every day, you might want to say, I don't want to run emails or phones that I've verified in the past 365 days. That way, that same criteria is being run for your batch, but you're only doing that new data that's flowing into your system since the last time that batch job was run. And then, in addition to that, you also have more filters that you're able to utilize. So say you only wanted to run batches for contacts that are in the state of North Carolina. You could absolutely do that, or maybe by a created date. So again, you're really allowed to control how broad or how narrowed of a scope you want your batch job to be. And after we make those selections, it's as easy as hitting save, and then we can go ahead and either run our batch job, or we can wait for it to go when it's been scheduled. And just to give you a tiny bit of backup, when we set it up, again, it's a wizard-based installation, and you really have just a few steps that you need to do as far as setting up and getting your information ready to go in the system. You would just set up a mapping that lets you both look at the information that's going into the system. When we say, hey, we want to validate that email, you would just set up in our service and say, we want our email object that's living inside of our Salesforce to then go out and be verified by Informatica's email service, address, or phone service. And then on this right-hand side, we show some of the fields that we created, and when we were hovering over that click to verify button or looking up in that contact detail, these are the fields that we just created and set up this mapping here, and that's how that information will flow into that object. So again, whether you have a contact record that you're updating, a brand new account lead, or contact record that you're updating, or having data flow in, we've got multiple ways that you can go ahead and verify that data that's flowing into and living within your Salesforce system.
All right, thanks, Cheryl. That was very informative, and hopefully everyone found that as useful as I did. Now, before we get into questions, I'd be kind of disappointed in myself if I didn't mention that you'll be able to see us live at Dreamforce the week of October 4th in San Francisco. If you're going to be there, please stop by the booth and see a demo live for yourself. We'll have team members there on hand to answer any and all of your questions and can even walk you through the system there in the booth. In addition, in the attachments section in your current webinar viewing screen, you'll be able to download our latest guide on how to have accurate contact data inside of Salesforce. This guide is going to walk you through the many options, some of which we discussed here with Cheryl today. All right, now let's get into some questions. For everyone on the call, if you'd like, just go up to the questions tab and start inputting your questions. Cheryl, while you were presenting, we had a number of questions come in. How about I go through some of those? Maybe I'll ask the question, you answer, and if there's one in there that I can give a quick answer to, I'll jump in at that point.
Yeah, that sounds perfect.
Okay, I've got a few of these here I was organizing while you were giving the demo. The first one here is about the global coverage. So you mentioned global coverage of 200 or something for phone numbers and address. What about email?
Yeah, absolutely. Email is definitely a global solution.
Exactly, yeah, and as we kind of mentioned, I think when I was teeing up the demo there, we have phone number validation and address validation in over 240 countries and territories. So pretty much, the entire world for all three of those services. Great solution, and again, in that Salesforce Manager's Guide, it's going to talk to you about those three services and how you can verify that information right inside of Salesforce. All right, another question. Is this different than the Address Doctor that Informatica has been offering?
So the address solution that you're looking at is the Address Doctor Cloud that you're familiar with. So it is that same instance, but now we have the Informatica address validation. So same great product, but just slightly different name.
Exactly, and we have another related question in here about where does the StrikeIron acquisition come into play? So actually, both Cheryl and I came from that side of the equation, and the email verification and the phone validation were products that we offered at StrikeIron. We coupled them together with that great address verification solution from Address Doctor to form contact data verification. This is the data as a service offering that we were talking about here today. All right. The question about how difficult is it to check the email when the user clicks save versus clicking the little icon?
It's really no different. So when you click that icon, basically it's doing just that one that you're looking at, whether it's email, phone, or address. It's just that specific service that you're on that tab for. If you hit save, the really only different thing is that it's obviously going to save right away, but it's going to run that validation and then save. The biggest thing is to say you're changing an address, a phone, and an email. You could do that validation when you hit save on all three at the same time instead of hitting the individual, that gray question mark box next to each individual one. You can get them all done with one click.
Perfect. Kind of two related questions here. One is about do the batch jobs update Salesforce records, or does it just perform the verification? And kind of what's the output of that batch job? Does it update the records themselves?
It absolutely will. So it's going to update the information, especially with something like the address, where we're actually potentially correcting that address. So like your zip code, if you put the 5-digit zip code, we're going to add that +4, so you'll have that full zip code in. We're going to update that information. So not only is it going to update that address, but also those other codes. So if there's any other information from the plethora of information you can get back from our service, or like that time zone, or for email, the valid or invalid check, you really get to decide what information you're saving from that check and how you're showing it. But it's absolutely updating that object.
Exactly. And another related question, actually, kind of to that, the question is, will this cloud option take care of match merge of customers without duplicating the record? So I think you pretty accurately articulated that, right? That it's actually just going to be updating the current record. You're not going to end up with duplicates every time that you run, say, a batch job for one particular customer.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, it's not going to be creating a new record, unless you're on the new record button, and then you would be creating a new record.
Great question here, though. I know we get this often. Doesn't my ESP already validate emails before I send out an email blast? So, you know, if you take that those email addresses from Salesforce and send them to your ESP through some sort of integration, do they do that for you?
Not really, no. Really, ESPs, the information that they're pulling back is after it's been sent. You know, has it bounced? Did you hit a spam trap? You know, are you endangering resources? That's happening after that's been sent.
Absolutely. Great question here about sales teams and having to research. So, you know, we often see this, right, where the sales teams are spending a lot of time researching phone numbers before every call. Can you actually tell me which phone numbers are accurate and which ones, you know, I need more new numbers for?
Absolutely, yeah. We're going to give you that valid or invalid. We're even going to give you stuff like landline or mobile. So if that's important to you, whether you're going to use that phone number to call someone or even to send an SMS message to, you're getting some of that information as well.
Perfect. We have maybe two more questions here that came in. One is about, I know I had kind of touched upon the malicious threat side of this equation during my presentation, but good question. So I know spam traps are dangerous. What other types of emails can get me into trouble?
Sure. There's also things called moles, and they may not be directly owned by one of the spam networks, but they could be reporting to them. They could be a habitual complainer. So we also identify items like that, or parked domains. Say someone created a website and they never set an email up to go with it. The email that matches the name of that website can be sold off and used by a spam network. That would be a parked domain. We identify those as well. So many different items are identified with the hygiene to make sure you're sending to safe recipients.
Fantastic. I think this is our last question that was typed in here. We scrolled through. If I missed any of your questions, I will absolutely get back to you via email with the answer. But last question that I see in here that we haven't already answered, is it better to implement in real time or validate after the fact?
So we actually would advocate for both. Not only would you want to catch up your legacy data if you haven't been validating it, and then also really at point of capture, as that information is coming into your system, that's really the first point of contact you have, and that's a great place to go ahead and make sure that as the data is coming in, you can have it validated. But also, as ongoing, if you look at emails, they can change 30% year over year. So you also want to, on some cadence, also be refreshing that data and make sure that you're keeping it up to date and checking that that data you have is still valid.
Absolutely, and I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, we actually just put out some new research with a company called Ascend2 that found that actually only about 16% of companies out there are actually following that best practice of, you know, validating on real time and then validating periodically through the year. In fact, about 31% of all companies are validating, say, annually or never at all, which is just far into infrequent, as Cheryl had pointed out, as well as, you know, we kind of mentioned 30% of those emails change every year. So if you're not keeping up with it, your Salesforce instance quickly becomes out of date as those email address changes or phone numbers or addresses for every one of your customers change. And with that, I believe that we've answered all of the questions. Again, one more reminder to please go to the attachment section and download the Salesforce Manager's Guide to Capturing Accurate Contact Data. And if you're at Dreamforce in just a few weeks, please stop by the booth, see us, say hello. We'll go through a demo, and we can even go more in depth into these offerings for you. With that, Cheryl, I'd like to thank you very much for your time today, and for all of you for dialing in and listening to our webinar. Thank you very much for your time. We'll see you next time. Thanks.